Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. We're reconvening from executive session as well as our budget session. If you would like to welcome everyone to our June 10th, 21 voting session. If you would, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, if I would indulge me to read my notice, please. This board sets aside 30 minutes of each meeting to allow members of the public to offer public comments directly to the board and superintendent on issues they believe important to our schools. To maximize the opportunity for the number of people wishing to speak, this is not an interactive process. Board members do not interrupt, respond to, or engage with public commenters. Commenters acknowledge that public comment is not unrestricted. They agree that they will not raise individual personnel issues or individual student issues. They acknowledge the board members will not react with them and agree to follow the chairman's instructions when the chair is enforcing those agreements. The board appreciates all of our community members that choose to participate in the public comment section of the board meeting. Thank you. Ms. Gupta, we have 15, so they get 2 minutes each. Thank you.
Our first speaker will be Jim Kalina, who will speak about brief discussion about critical race theory, followed by Tova Ringland, who will speak about special needs.
Okay, I am Jim Kalina, K-A-L-I-N-A, and I appreciate superintendent and board members an opportunity to be here. Well, last time I was in this building was about 30 years ago. We can all agree life was simpler back then, and I had the fortune of working with Kermit Keatum on a project to develop a $3 million nature center called Nature's Way. And Kermit authorized me to go out to the schools, do presentations to the teachers, to the PTO, full assembly type meetings to introduce this concept. Well, everybody loved the concept, but I learned pretty quickly that teachers were more worried about additional supplies and not trying to meet $3 million. And PTOs, they're thinking bake sale and car wash type thing. So unfortunately, out of the $3 million goal, we ended up about $2.999 million short of our objective. One of the reasons I wanted to be here today is to say thank you. My understanding is, and I'm not sure exactly how it happened, that the board, is that the right way to refer collectively, board and superintendent, that there was a policy adopted not to put the clinical race theory into the schools, and I greatly appreciate that. One thing that concerns me is
30 seconds.
Rumors are starting to flow. Washington may put some strings on that. Let me close quickly, give you the definition of the word C-Y-N-I-C-A-L, cynical, concerned only with one's own interests. Clinical race theory, from what I understand, paints me as an oppressor, so they're not interested in my perspective. Typically disregarding accepted or appropriate standards. I don't think throwing bottles, rocks, robbing, looting, and what have you are there. Okay, and closing, a cynical manipulation.
Time.
When you think cynical.
Our next speaker will be Tova Ringland, who will speak about special needs, followed by Jennifer Sesko, who will speak about school counseling and ethics.
My name's Tova, and I'm speaking as a special needs mom. I'm continuing to talk about special needs students in self-contained classrooms for students on the autism spectrum and with intellectual disabilities. Today, I want to explain the effects of suspension on our children and our families. As you know, if you give a child something they want, they will engage in behavior to get those desired results. So, if a student wants to escape work and is suspended, they're given exactly what they want. I'm talking about the kindergartners in these special programs who are suspended 10 times in 3 weeks. The child says, "I go home." Another example is the older child who says, "I get in trouble, so I can go home and do no work." Or the child whose teacher wrote that in her professional opinion, she believes the child's trying to escape work and be sent home. You may also know that 10 days is the maximum amount of time a child with an IEP can be suspended before a manifestation meeting is held. Eventually, the 10 days are used up and the child no longer gets the desired result, which can cause behavior to increase in frequency and intensity in attempts to go home. As parents, we understand our child's behavior was not acceptable. Our children have IEPs and behavior intervention plans and are going to need help their entire lives. The problem is that students like ours are out for 3 to 4 days per incident, which is a long chunk of time.
30 seconds.
Additionally, suspensions often happen days after the offense occurs. An example is when a student is suspended Wednesday through Friday for something that happened Monday. You can ask the verbal child while they're home, and they don't know. For these families, parents are being punished, not the kids, because parents must take time off of work every time there's a suspension. I'm asking for help in changing the way special needs students' behavior is handled.
Our next speaker is Jennifer Susko, who will speak about school counseling and ethics. She'll be followed by Christine Roseman, who will speak about CRT.
I've given you all copies of ASCA's position statements on cultural diversity and LGBTQ students because it's important to see examples of what school counselors are mandated by our ethics to do. We are expected to be social justice advocates. Ethics and counseling are huge. We cannot disregard them. Please read the documents and understand that this is what you shake our hands for when you congratulate us for receiving highly acclaimed RAMP awards. I've been to the front to shake your hands for RAMP. The award stands for Recognized ASCA Model Program. To receive it, you must be modeling what ASCA requires of us in those statements. An updated one on racism releases in July. There's strong research on the importance of talking to kids about race. If we don't, they formulate their own misguided opinions. Making white students feel guilty is a silly concept and something we would never do, but we do have to equip students with the tools to think critically and discuss race because it's part of the world they must navigate. You're underestimating our kids, their genius, and their inclination toward making the world better. And you're also creating more inequity in Cobb by attempting to prohibit us from helping all students access the education they deserve on topics that impact their lives daily. Some of what you voted on is conflated and could ask counselors to violate ethics, which is prohibited. This is especially worrisome, so here's my plan. Every time I'm asked to violate my school counseling ethics by Cobb County School District, I'll document it for Cognia and interested legislators. I'll also document for Cognia every time I'm retaliated against, intimidated, or disciplined unfairly because I'm speaking out here and or when I'm engaging in anything else I have a right to do, since that would relate to overall governance. My school counseling colleague and I would be
30
happy
seconds.
to meet with you to explain and discuss this cooperatively, to explain in more detail the school counseling perspective regarding positive racial identity development, and to listen to your thoughts on how we can collaborate to ensure that all students are served equitably. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christine Roseman, who will speak about CRT, followed by Alex Judge, who will speak about diversity and inclusion.
Thank you. My name's Christine Rosman. I'm a resident of Marietta, and I would like to thank you all for passing the resolution for not having CRT and the 1619, but really, if we could go ahead and go the extra step and do the board policy, because that is really what is needed. As board members, you are to do reflect what your constituents want. And Cobb County has been a great place, and our education system is kind of not doing so well. CRT truly teaches racism. It just kind of changes the players. Instead of being racist against blacks, it's now racist against whites. It's still the consciousness of racism, and that's not helping us at all as a community, as a country. And if we're teaching victimhood instead of self-reliance, how about if we focus on, say, the Constitution, where with the Constitution, then this is ends up teaching self-reliance. People learn how to fish. They're going to teach you, oh, I'm going to learn how to fish, instead of feeling like you're a victim of everything. I've
30
had
seconds.
a great life. I'm 61 years old. I love this country. I love this county. And when I talk to my neighbors and my friends that have kids, and my friends that are teachers, and they say what the heck is going on in Cobb County and that they're afraid for this country, I can tell you it's going socialist, Marxist, and that does not reflect what Cobb County wants. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Alex Judge, who will speak about diversity and inclusion, followed by Homer Keller, who will speak about CRT.
My name is Alexander Judge. I'm 11 years old. I was previously a student at Mount Bethel Elementary. American history as it is taught to us is incomplete. There's little representation of those in history that are of color, and our schools are unaware. When I questioned the lack of Black history education, it was admitted that no one even thought about Black history and its inclusion. In January 2020, I met with my principal. I asked her why we didn't celebrate Black History Month since it is a part of American history. There needs to be more adults aware of this issue in schools, the countries, and even at the state level. This is why diversity and inclusion in our schools is important. It is for students like me that can learn about Americans that are of color, as well as those that look like my friends. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Homer Keller, who will speak about CRT, followed by Shelby Carroll, who will speak about CRT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Homer Keeler. Critical race theory is a theory espousing that all of society is racialized and properly viewed through a prism of identity groups based on race and color, with minorities being the oppressed while white people serve as the oppressor. In this ideology framing, all of society's ills are ultimately caused by white people and the various systems that CRT adherents associate with white culture. This includes Christianity, capitalism, traditional marriage, rule of law, traditional family structure, and the Republican form of government. CRT teaches that white people are inherently and irredeemably racist and benefit from various systemically racist power structures that white people have put in place and perpetuate. Similarly, America is founded or traced to the systemically racism. The purpose of CRT is to sow division among Americans under the guise of equality or equity and diversity. CRT completely contradicts the foundational American creed that Americans are created with equal dignity and with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The fact that each of you were able to be elected and have the honor of sitting in the school board
30 seconds.
is a direct result of our Constitution and your rights to life, liberty, and the pursuits of your happiness. I respectfully encourage that you vote against the inclusion of CRT to ensure your children are able to have and claim the same rights that you have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our next speaker is Shelby Carroll, who will speak about CRT, followed by Virginia White, who will speak about CRT.
My name is Shelby Carroll, and I am a parent of a mixed-race family, and I am against critical race theory. I am for and actively teach my children the history of our great nation. I teach the atrocities and inequalities that have happened against my brothers and sisters. It is not okay these things happened, and we must learn about our past so we do not repeat it. But it is because of the past is why I'm so adamantly against CRT being taught in our schools. CRT is divisive and breeds hate. I saw it outside when I was waiting to come in to speak. Cobb County Schools' mantra, one team, one goal, student success, will not be possible with the implementation of CRT. And I just want to take a moment to thank those who voted against CRT being implemented. And I also want to take a moment, since I have it, to ask you to, or tell you as a taxpayer, that we all have a right and deserve to be here and inside, not everybody waiting outside since 4 o'clock, to all be present during these board meetings. We are taxpayers, and it's our right to be in here. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Virginia White, who will speak about CRT, followed by Deborah Bennett, who will speak about CRT.
Hi. I know that you have already heard a lot of the arguments on both sides. There are three things that I want to particularly point out. One is that I had just moved to Cobb County in 1995 when the Board of Commissioners passed the Family Values Act. And I know that that had a negative impact on the economy of Cobb County. And I'm concerned that what you are looking at now could have that same effect. And that's not, another point I want to make is that we are doing a disservice to our students who need to compete globally in the educational business field. And part of being able to compete globally is by learning and knowing critical thinking. And this is a real opportunity to practice critical thinking. And so I feel that we're doing a disservice to our students when we are not giving them that opportunity to practice
30
critical
seconds.
thinking. The third is that almost 40% of Cobb County population are people of color. And by not sharing all of the facts, we are really denying them and all of us the truth. And so it's important for us to all be winners by knowing all of the facts. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Deborah Bennett, who will speak about CRT, followed by Jillian Ford, who will speak about critical race theory in support of Black board members.
Thank you for this time. My name is Reverend Deborah Bennett, and I have to say, just excuse me to all of you, and I'd like you to look at me because I need help understanding. I need help to understand what makes this board so fearful that you have voted to not allow your children to critically explore their world. So fearful that you have looked at 3 of your fellow board members and the lived experience of over 40% of Cobb County and said, your experience, your lived experience doesn't matter. To vote for a resolution that systemically disenfranchises so many people is the very face of the racial issues we are asking you to allow to be examined. I'm speaking right now to my dear white friends. Our privilege is the soup we swim in and have swam in since we were born. And I get it, it's scary. It's scary to look at this demon and this beast in the eye. But my friends, we must. And in all areas of our education, our children are encouraged to critically think. We wouldn't feed them the answers to the math problems and tell them not to worry about how we got to the answer, would we? We'd want them to understand. And we need to understand how we got to this point in history. When we teach history without teaching all of the history and without examining the impact of that history on our present, we
30
lose
seconds.
the very power inherent in history. Isn't that what us preachers do on Sunday mornings? We look at history and we say, okay, what does this have to do with now? And we help you take that history into the present, into how you live your life day in and day out. Critically examining race relations by any name is vital to answering that question for us today. So I close with just, if not critical race theory, then what? What are you going to do to ensure that our children are critically looking at our history so that we don't repeat it? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jillian Ford, who will speak about critical race theory in support of Black board members, followed by Shweta Krishnan, who will speak about Wheeler name change.
Hello, this evening I will be addressing two topics. The first is the superintendent's hypocrisy, and the second is the support for 3 Black members of the board. For more than 3 years, students, parents, and community members have been reporting instances of racial violence being consistently inflicted on our Black children. To highlight just a few, in 2017, we reported that a white North Cobb student threatened to, quote, exterminate all the niggers. I want to mass genocide all the niggers. I wish God didn't actually create niggers. And if any niggers want to come fight me or whatever the fuck you porch monkeys want to do, you will have to answer to my fucking Glock.
Ms. Ford,
End quote.
excuse me. I'm not going to sit here and listen to vulgar language.
I wish that student had not
Ms.
sent that
Ford,
to
please.
the entire school
Re-
board. Imagine how the Black
reword.
kids felt.
Reword
Imagine
your-
how the Black kids felt.
Ms. Ford,
It's hard to hear, isn't it?
the next
Imagine how the
speaker.
Black kids felt. That same year, we reported instances of
Stafford,
racist vandalism
cut the
at
mic.
Kel. Pardon?
We're not going to listen to vulgarity and attacks on individuals. Thank you. You're excused, Ms. Ford. Thank you. Ms. Ford. Ms. Ford, thank you. Not those kind of words. No, ma'am. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Shweta Krishnan, who will speak about Wheeler name change, followed by John Nwosu, who will speak about support for our board.
Good evening. My name is Shweta Krishnan, and I'm a student at Wheeler High School. I would like to start off by discussing the lack of communication that has occurred over the past year. From June of last year until now, we have repeatedly asked to meet with all of you to discuss our initiative and the ideas we have put together. You asked us to provide statistics and facts. We did exactly that at the board meeting held in April. The board chair then claimed that we didn't have enough public support and that there are more people opposed to this initiative. Yet we have a petition with over 6,000 signatures, including current students, teachers, faculty, alumni, and members of the community. It is understandable if you don't entirely agree with our ideas, but we deserve an explanation. We have tirelessly worked over the past year to engage in a discussion, but you have denied us each and every time. What does that teach students if you walk away from an issue you don't agree with? It just shows lack of effort and care, something that should not be instilled in students' minds. Cobb County is constantly preaching student success, but how are students supposed to feel successful in an environment where they don't even feel comfortable learning in? It's blatantly disrespectful that we are not being taken seriously enough to address this issue. Addressing this issue does not mean sending back a short 3-sentence notice that barely touches on the matter at hand. It also does not mean going around our initiative to do an interview with a media source and publicly commenting on our research without taking the time to actually understand what we present.
30 seconds.
However, addressing an issue does mean that you engage in frequent discussions with us and acknowledge our views. It also means treating your students with respect and regarding their asks and efforts in order to do what needs to be done. To conclude, I ask you to take a moment to use empathy. Use empathy for a new student coming into high school, an already difficult transition, and think about the thoughts that would go through their head after learning they go to a school named after a Confederate general. Use empathy for the students, teachers, and faculty who have to walk into the building every day that proudly displays the embarrassing name Joseph.
Our next speaker is John Nwosu, who will speak about support for our board, followed by Christine McKinnell, who will speak about building a bridge.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Wosu. I am a proud member of the Cobb County community. I was raised here. I went to Bryan Elementary, Floyd Middle School, and I graduated from South Cobb High School. Now I'm back. And I wanted to talk today a little bit about support for our board members, but also about good conservative values, right? And I put good in quotation marks. All right, so I remember growing up here, I used to see a lot of Confederate flags, and whenever we would try to have a conversation about it, people would say heritage and not hate. And I wish we would apply that idea to this conversation, because CRT is really about understanding American values, about how life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is something that our forefounders talked about, but it wasn't a reality for everyone. And at the same time that they were talking about it, they also enslaved Africans, and they were participating in the genocide of Native Americans, of indigenous people of this land. So I want us to use a lens, i.e. CRT, to be able to have an honest look at history, because it is our heritage and we should not hate it. Next, I want to talk about protecting families, right? Our property values, our graduation rates, and post-secondary opportunities are not at stake because of Jaha Howard, Sharice Davis, and Trey Hutchins, but because these 4 white district leaders continue refusing to address the Black, Indigenous people of color, the big elephant in the room around race and racism. Our accreditation is at risk because we have missed the mark on addressing the unique needs and challenges of BIPOC students and families as they navigate unique biases and
30
racial
seconds.
barriers that arise because of how individuals and institutions tend to treat them in response to the color of their skin. Poverty has been framed primarily as a moral failing instead of an outcome of racial discrimination and social and economic inequality in housing and employment. Education and other segments of our society are all being prevented from having important conversations because we frame these as a race issue. Critical race theory will help us do better. And exposing taxpayer money to lawsuits is the last thing, because I know y'all care about taxpayers'
Time.
money.
That's time.
A young kid was recently completed suicide because the district didn't do enough to protect them from the bullying that was taking place. Racial bullying occurs every day, and if we do not actually stand up against it, I think that we are putting all of ourselves at risk. That money will not bring that kid back, but I'm hoping that we can learn a lesson here to prevent that from happening in our district, protect taxpayers' money and life. So I appreciate your time. I'm sorry for going over. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your night.
Our next speaker is Christine McKinnell, who will speak about building a bridge, followed by Anna Valencia, who will speak about Wheeler name change.
Good evening. I come to you from the Cheatham Hill, Loving-Good, Hillgrove District. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your dedication to our Cobb County students and families. And I also, more importantly, really want to thank each and every parent, community member, and guardian that is outside on both sides of this issue. Since the pandemic, the suicide rate among school-age children has tripled. CRT is not new. Unfortunately, racism is not going to just disappear with a resolution. It exists across all hues. In Cobb, a biracial student had ketchup smeared in her hair. And in Virginia, a student attempted suicide due to stress from CRT curriculum. How does a mother in Cobb County explain to her children one is the oppressor and one is the oppressed? I have an idea. I think this section should be called Parent Solutions instead of Parent Comments. It's just an idea and it's free. One team. Let's create a diversity and curriculum review board. Let's be the example, not only for Georgia, but for the nation. Each board member can put forth 1 to 2 members, with the superintendent adding 1. No diversity and equity officer, but a community of stakeholders in Cobb County with terms running parallel to their
30
board member.
seconds.
One goal, review curriculum and diversity issues. And student success. As parents, as the community of Cobb County, we have the same desires for our students. Great schools, safe schools, and bright futures. Let's start building that bridge.
Our next speaker is Anna Valencia, who will speak about Wheeler name change, followed by Tammy O'Banion, who will speak about CRT.
Members of the board, you may recall the Wheeler name change initiative's presentation at the April board meeting, where we provided you with almost a year's worth of thoroughly researched information, statistics, and rebuttals. I would like you also to recall that we asked you to provide us in return meaningful feedback that proved You have our best interests at heart. I am not surprised to say that we are strongly disappointed when we received a letter that did not address the concerns we presented at the board meeting. The letter that we received following the board meeting only showed us that you have not been engaged in the work we tirelessly have been committed to. If the general idea in our request has become that unclear, then allow me to reiterate what we like to hear from you. Proof that our voices have not fallen on deaf ears. We would like to see that time better spent on deciding our futures has not been wasted catering to a board that does not recognize or appreciate it. We have done our homework. We have given you detailed information on the events of Joseph Wheeler's entire life and why they do not matter as much as the message that his name sends. We have been nothing but honest with you because we firmly believe that collaboration and transparency are key. We are only students, and all we ask is that you put in time as well as to provide us with a response that shows us that you hold the concerns of your country as top priority. Cobb
30
County's
seconds.
mission boasts one team, one goal, student success. We use the skills that your team teaches us in order to pursue our goal, striving for success. Your aim is for us to achieve our goals that we set in our life, and so we act accordingly. Prove to us that you still abide by your mission, that our voices are heard, and most of all, that our goals are as important as yours. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Tammy O'Banion, who will speak about CRT.
Does someone say start? Okay. First, thank you very much for your service. My dad spent 2 terms on the Chino Unified School District Board and and I get it. I get it. So thank you so very much for your service. I'm here to talk about CRT and equity. Equity means fairness. I'm concerned that fairness is going to take the form of a mandate for equity of outcome as called for by critical race theory's Marxist ideological concept, as opposed to equity of opportunity, which promotes equal access to resources and self-determination. CRT categorizes people as oppressors or victims, and that our future is determined by the color of our skin, not on initiative and hard work. I believe scholastic performance is critical. Pew, GreatSchools.com, and the world's best education systems just issued reports that stated the United States falls far below the middle of the pack. So in allocating our budget, I think we need to focus on achieving the best possible academic outcomes for each student to succeed in today's competitive global economy. The tones in the classroom used need to emphasize the importance of learning relevant skills, hard work, and affirm that everybody has equal opportunity to succeed. I do not debate the criticality of racism in our society. I disagree with the attempt to remedy the social issues by investing in the Marxist-based critical race theory. That ideology is well-intended.
30 seconds.
Well-intended, but it assigns an oppressor or victim label on each child in that classroom. It is divisive, guilt-inducing, and demotivating, where equity of opportunity encourages an empowering, self-determination mindset. My proposal, because my dad always liked to have solutions offered with issues, to avoid the feel-good, sound-good ideology of Marxist critical race theory and instead challenge our seniors as an elective to understand.
That's time.
It was pretty, understand, okay. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Mr. Chair, that concludes our public comment.
Thank you. Okay, next we have, excuse me. I'd like to thank our speakers and for their sincere comments and their professionalism. And before I get started too, I'd like to let everyone know that Brad would like you to know that he's recovering well from a medical procedure and that he'll be back in full strength soon. And I should have said Mr. Wheeler. So, Brad, we're looking for you to be back strong and healthy in the July meeting. No items requiring action. Next, we'll be looking at the executive session. Mr. Ragsdale.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm going to ask our Chief HR Officer, Ms. Keely Bowen, to bring those items.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It is my pleasure to bring to you the Human Resources Personnel Report for today, June 10th, 2021. The administration recommends the approval of the identified employment actions of those individuals listed on the Personnel Action Report as discussed in executive session. We have 6 principal level or higher recommendations. We recommend that you approve the following actions. Dr. Ansley Daniel, reassignment to principal, Lost Mountain Middle School, effective July 1st, 2021. Allison Dugan, principal, Baker Elementary School, resignation, effective July 31st, 2021. Jeffrey Jones, appointment to principal, Baker Elementary School, effective June 11th, 2021. Dr. Laila Mitchell, appointment to principal, Simpson Middle School, effective July 1st, 2021. Dr. Lenora Nyesti, principal, Lost Mountain Middle School, retirement, effective July 1st, 2021. Dr. Lisa Williams, appointment to 49% Director of Leadership Management, Human Resources Division, effective June 11th, 2021. This concludes the Human Resources Personnel Report.
Chair will entertain a motion. The chair will make a motion. Mr. Chastain.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the report on the personnel as presented.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Banks, is there, there is no discussion. Any opposed? Seeing none, pass. Mr. Ragsdale. Okay, okay, I was thinking we had legal. Okay. Action agenda items 1, 2, 3, and 6 were put on the consent. If there are no objections, they are approved. And then Mr. Ragsdale will start with action item number 4.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm going to ask our Chief Operations Technology Officer, Mark Smith, to come and bring agenda item number 4.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent. As read earlier today, agenda item number 4, the recommendation for approval to construct the Cobb Online Learning Academy on the 3rd floor of the Cobb Horizon High School. Because of the district's commitment to online learning for Cobb students, it is necessary to construct the Cobb Online Learning Academy to accommodate this growing online learning environment. The recommended bidder would be Ward Humphreys Incorporated in the amount of $486,768. This is a budget SPLOST 5 budgeted item, and is the superintendent's recommendation to approve additional renovations at Cobb Horizon High School to accommodate the Cobb Online Learning Academy for the start of the next school year, and authorize the superintendent to execute the contract.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. The chair will entertain a motion. Ms. Davis.
I move that we approve the construction as presented.
Okay, the chair will second it. Is there a discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, I'm seeing 6. Mr. Wheeler.
Yes.
Okay, it is unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Ragsdale.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm going to ask our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Jennifer Lawson, to come and bring agenda item number 5.
Agenda item number 5 addresses the learning content areas of K-12 health and physical education. The procedure, the following is a review complies with the Cobb County Board Administrative Rule, IFAAR, Instructional Resources Selection and Acquisition. The resources under consideration for K-12 health and physical education were available for system-wide review as well as public review from May 3rd through May 14th. Per board policy, the Health Advisory Committee did meet to recommend and approve the final recommendation.
Chair will entertain a motion. The chair will make the motion. Do I have a to approve action item number 5? Do I have a second? So, Dr. Howard. Is there a discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of approval, raise your hand. I see 6 inside. Mr. Wheeler?
Yes, affirmative.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Ragsdale, number 7.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the board, it gives me great pleasure to ask our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Brad Johnson, to come and present agenda item number 7. Just another brief recap. The highlight is our team members for this budget. They have just done a yeoman's job going above and beyond every single day during this last school year through the pandemic, in the face of the pandemic, creating such a tremendous challenge for everyone across the country, but especially in education. I'm very proud to be able to present the budget that contains a minimum of 4 to an 8.6% raise in this budget. So, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Good evening, Board. Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Board, Mr. Superintendent. Board Agenda Item number 7 is recommendation for the adoption of the FY 2022 budget. Today marks the continuation of our FY 22 budget presentations and discussion with the Board. As you will recall, Financial Services has addressed the Board regarding the 22 tentative budget in April regarding the budget. The 22 budget development process has been articulated in detail to the Board, and the tentative budget was previously approved by the Board at the April 22nd, 2021 Board meeting. Summary and detailed budget information has been provided to the Board and has been available to the public via the district website. Additionally, the district has conducted 2 public budget input sessions, one in May and then one tonight at 6:30. Highlights of the 2022 tentative budget include the following. FY22 tentative budget presented today is balanced. The proposal contains no millage tax increase, as the millage rate presented remains at 18.9 mils, the same as it was the previous year. The proposal is based on a property digest growth estimate of 5.54%. So property values are growing in Cobb. The proposal is based on a $36 million state of Georgia QBE austerity cut reduction from last year. And that's amazing considering we're in the middle of a pandemic. And we hope that the other 40% will be restored next year. The proposal contains budgeted fund balance usage of $51 million. The proposal contains 26 additional instructional support positions. The proposal contains 6.5 custodian positions based on a square footage formula that we utilize. Staffing and operational costs for the new Susan Todd Pearson Middle School, and 4 positions for the Cobb Innovation and Technology Academy. The proposal contains a salary step for eligible employees based on their salary schedule that their salary is on. And finally, the proposal contains a salary increase for all non-temporary employees. The salary increase range is 4% to 8.6%, depending upon employee step eligibility. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my presentation of the general fund tentative budget scheduled for consideration tonight. And we're available for questions and comments and your board's consideration of approval.
Thank you. And the chair will entertain a motion. I saw Dr. Howard first.
Is it okay if I ask a question first?
During the discussion.
Sure. I'll go ahead and do the motion. I recommend that we adopt the FY 2022 budget as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Is there a second? I saw Mr. Hutchins' hand for a second. And discussion, Mr. Howard to ask first, so, and then Ms. Davis.
Thank you so much. Mr. Johnson, I appreciate the presentation. Really excited about the raise for our non-temporary employees. Have a question about how we answer the question about federal funds expected, I guess in the months to come with the whole COVID relief, and I forgot the exact name of the federal package coming. But I know I see the previous money illustrated here, but future money, what's the best way for us to explain where that money goes and how folks can readily see how we use it in comparison to the actual budget that we have here?
So That's a great question. The COVID, I guess the formal name for it is called the American Rescue Plan, and the third stimulus is being developed right now. As we develop this process, we have to have state approval for it. The total funds allocated for the third stimulus nationwide was $175 billion. Our portion of that is $160 million. Just some general comments on it. 20% of the funding must be spent on learning loss. So when the state sees our plan, and they're in the middle of looking at it right now, they will make sure that 20% is spent on learning loss, and I think ours includes more than that. Spending guidelines are very specific with the national guidelines for this program. Safely returning to in-person instruction, address learning loss, improving or promoting safe environments, assisting educators in providing virtual or hybrid instruction, addressing revenue funding gaps as a result of cuts to education. And you know we've had those funding cuts, and it's been a little painful, although we've come through it pretty well. And then also there's a thing where they talk about planning these monies to ensure continuity of core services. So I realize that's a high-level explanation of the funds, but we're working on that plan right now, and that's a separate, it's like a grant, actually, really. So it's kind of separate from the budget, but we will be working, we're in the middle of working on that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Superintendent, do we have an estimated time, maybe at a July or August board meeting where we'll get a presentation on this, the $160 million?
We actually don't, because we have to wait on approval from the state. As a matter of fact, what we've heard a number of people mention about summer school, we have chosen to go ahead and engage the summer school plan, even though we have not had approval from the state yet. So we expect that approval, so it's not a big risk by any stretch of the imagination, but we had to make a decision. Are we going to confirm our commitment to the summer school plan and keep that funded? So as soon as we get approval from the state, we will bring that to the board. Even if we don't, if we get approval and it's in between meetings, we'll still email that to the board. So we'll let you know and keep you informed.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Davis?
Thank you. I actually had the same question as Dr. Howard, so you did answer that. And I was just wondering, as we developed the plan, how much we might have gotten feedback or input from people at the school level in developing the plan.
Well, I think finance is working with the different divisions at the central office to develop the plan. I think they've been working with the schools to develop what they think is needed for the instruction of students. Learning loss is a big deal, and I know they've gotten a lot of input from the schools. A little bit out of my lane, but I think there's been quite a bit of feedback, and I think when you hear the final plan, everybody's going to be pretty pleased.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the 2022 budget, signify. Okay, I'm showing 6. Mr. Wheeler?
Yes, on 7.
And I'm showing unanimous. So if there are no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you.